Going live. You're live. Hey everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome. We got questions already. This is John Bishop. I'm not going to waste any time. John Bishop says, does Swedenborg mention that 2,000 years of Judeo history mirrors 2,000 years of Christian history with parallels like 400 years of slavery in Egypt from Abraham to 40 years of persecution in Rome after Jesus, and many more such parallels up to today? Isn't God giving us a very important clue? It's fascinating, but no, Swedenborg does not mention anything about the numbers beyond those that are mentioned in the Bible. There, he's very clear that every number is super important, correspondential. As far as how numbers unfold in the world around us, whether those correspond in the same way, he doesn't seem to indicate that they do, but they could. Brian says, what was Swedenborg's opinion on Job? I have read in some places that he wasn't a fan, but that seems strange as it is such a rich book. I remember one time, Brian, I was reading Job. It was the first time I'd really ever read it, I think. And I was loving it because, if anyone's not familiar, the Book of Job is this story of a guy who's got it all. Everything's going great for him. And then he loses everything. Just tragedy after tragedy after tragedy hits him. And after he loses everything, he's complaining to God. He's upset with God, and he says, hey, why'd you even make me? I forget exactly what he says, but something along the lines of, why'd you even make me? If you're going to do this to me, you just ruined me. That's super mean of you. And it really expresses this feeling that you have when life is difficult and you have a concept that God is the one who created life, and you want to lodge a complaint. So I was really loving it. And then later I had heard the same kind of thing, that Swedenborg says Job wasn't fully part of the word, and I was disappointed because I really liked Job. So what I understand he said about it is that Job is written in correspondences, like the other books of the Bible that Swedenborg calls the Word. So it has that property in it, that it has divine truth in it. It speaks in a way in which the things that are mentioned there are symbolic of deeper things, which is the hallmark of divine revelation. However, he does say that it doesn't have a continuous, I believe he said, the continuous internal sense like the other books. So it's got correspondences, but they're not as intricately woven together as, let's say, Genesis or Deuteronomy. But I believe it's still got value in it. And Swedenborg would say so. Tim Wood says, what would Swedenborg say about the idea? If you're new to this, by the way, you can see people are just writing comments in the chat, and I'm doing my best to talk about them. So you jump right in there. Say something that's on your mind. Ask a question. What would Swedenborg say about the idea that there's no hell and it was just created by the churches to control the masses, and that we create our own hell here on earth? I've seen that taught in a few places online, such as Channeling Eric on YouTube. So in some ways, there is no hell, according to Swedenborg. The traditional Christian concept of hell, which is hell is a place designed by God where you are punished as retribution for being evil, and the point of it is to punish you. And it's a place that it's like a prison. You're thrown in there and you can't get out because of the bad things you've done. You've got like a sentence that you have to pay out for eternity there. Swedenborg does talk a lot about hell, but he asserts a couple of drastically different things about it than the description that I just gave. One is, he says, nobody in hell is forced to be there. Everybody who goes into hell chooses it, in fact, runs toward it, because the only way that you're in hell is if you're in this hell of your own making, like you were saying, Tim. Now, to him, what hell is probably different than even what we mean in that phrase, we make our own hell here on earth. There's a lot of people use the term hell just to describe, it was hell on earth, that this was really miserable, some kind of suffering or negativity is hell. To Swedenborg, hell is pleasure. Hell is particularly the pleasure that you feel in harming others or following your impulses to aggrandize yourself or in working against the divine design in some way. That hell is the pleasure of those, as opposed to heaven, which is the pleasure of doing good things. And that people who run their lives based on the motivation of those pleasures, of the hellish pleasures, have made themselves into what he would call a hell. And because of the way that this spiritual world works, when you go to the afterlife, what's inside you creates the conditions that are around you, and you are automatically gravitate toward people who have similar loves to you. So that ends up with people that all have selfish and malicious pleasures all get together, and that makes life uncomfortable for them because it's not fun to be around someone who has that kind of pleasure, and it creates hellish looking places. Although to the people who are in hell, those places, Swedenborg says, don't look hellish. They look nice because that's something God does to make it so hellish people aren't more miserable than would be helpful in some way. So the question of, hell to control the masses, the concept that those churches have been telling people about what hell is and what puts you in there and what the nature of it is and what the intent of it is and even what the experience of it is, Swedenborg would say that's not true. Make our own hell here on earth. Everybody makes their own individual heaven or hell based on what you enjoy doing. Everyone's allowed to go and participate in what they enjoy. Was that good? Matthew Bush says, "Hi Curtis, great to see you again. I have a problematic neighbor who's an alcoholic who I can't avoid and can't either remember all the things he's done when drunk 24/7 or just doesn't care. And every time I mention anything, he gets offensive or offended or both. Any tips?" I don't think I have any tips. I don't have a lot of experience on how to best deal with people who have a major substance addiction. I think that there's a whole school of thought around that. I know that Swedenborg says the study of charity, or the study of how to best love your neighbor, this was the most sophisticated study in ancient civilizations. So this is a thing that's really, it's not just, oh, you should know how to do it. It's really difficult to know how to correctly express charity to people who are in all kinds of different states of life. Swedenborg says that charity doesn't always mean, and this is something that I think people who have studied alcoholism came up with this term, but it doesn't always involve enabling. Just because there's somebody who could be in a state of life where, like letting them do things, whatever they want, and borrow things and ask of you whatever, that's a great thing to do them. But if they're someone who's in the state like you're describing, and being a doormat is going to lead to problems for you right away and for them in the long run, you can be in the state of charity even if you're having to set hard boundaries and stuff. Unfortunately, what those would be and how to deal with that neighbor, I don't know. But I don't want you to feel like, oh, well, I'm a religious, spiritual person, so I can't do whatever needs to be done. Sometimes, the intervention needs to happen. Swedenborg talks about there's times when there's legal action that has to be taken. The way that you can do it in the spirit of charity is to really keep the intent is to protect yourself and others and help that person ultimately. So don't let it be, I'm going to take revenge. I'm going to get overwhelmed by revenge. Sorry, that sounds like a difficult thing, and thank you for being so thoughtful about it. Dreamers of Dreams says, had some suggestions and said, sorry to butt in. I hope I didn't offend. I think go for it. Anyone in the chat can answer these questions as well in their own way. Just don't give a better answer than I give. I'm just kidding. Bar is low. Good morning. I'm just getting down to the next question. Barbara says, any word on Judas? I heard he's not in hell because he was part of God's plan. Could that be correct? Swedenborg does talk about Jesus calling together the 12 disciples at one point, the same ones that were on earth in the afterlife. So if it's 12, I would imagine Judas is there. I think that it doesn't seem like, you can never know anyone's spiritual state, but it just in the little snippets of the text describing this person that's called Judas there, it doesn't seem like he is overwhelmed by enjoying the pleasures of evil, which is what leads you to hell. Yeah, he did that. He did do that thing where he betrayed Jesus, and that led to Jesus's death. But there's definitely providence in that. But also, right afterwards, Judas felt really bad about it. There was a definite repentance there. It seemed like he had been overwhelmed in a moment or something and made a bad choice. But didn't he kill himself right afterwards out of despair? So it seems like his conscience was gnawing at him. I don't know if that's a common Christian doctrine that Judas went to hell, but no single act puts anyone in hell. Hell, as we said before, is about cultivating, is about what you enjoy most and what you pattern your life after. Okay. Elise says, why am I able to see angels and spirits? All my life I've been able to, but I don't know why. I also get vivid dreams that come true. What's that like? I mean, is it something that's, do you like it? Or is it overbearing? Is it scary? Is it comforting? I'd love to hear more about that. I guess the mechanic would be that you're, like Swedenborg, your spiritual eyes are open to an extent, that all of us have the ability to see into this spiritual world and hear it and feel it, but those senses are dormant in some way, but they can get opened up. That's what happened to Swedenborg. And I don't know. Yeah. And it does seem like some people just have more of that throughout their life. Swedenborg, when he was younger, did talk to his parents about seeing angels in the garden and things. I know people who have said that I have relatives who've said that they've had spiritual kind of experiences just throughout their life. As far like that, so that's the mechanic. As for why in Providence, I don't know, I guess so that you can, that's why I'm asking, like, what's the nature of it? But maybe it's just part of the world, us getting more and more in tune with the way human beings were initially wired to be. According to Swedenborg, everyone used to be able to see angels and spirits, that there was, and vivid dreams, that there used to be direct revelation. There was not reading the Bible and interpreting it. There was just direct contact with angels and with heaven, and all life after death and all that stuff was known through that. So maybe you're ahead of the curve there. Richard Stevens, Jesus advised us not to remarry. Is this to avoid conflict in the spiritual world? Where does Jesus advise us not to remarry? Well, no, it's not for that. Whenever Jesus is talking about marriage or anything else, he's talking correspondentially. So for example, when he says in heaven they are no longer married or are given in marriage, but are like the angels in heaven, Swedenborg is adamant that that is talking about the marriage of goodness and truth rather than marriage of two individuals, because according to Swedenborg, married couples are the basic unit of life in heaven. And if you don't find a marriage partner here, you find one on the other side. And he doesn't seem to say that he doesn't talk about, to give any kind of dire warning about the idea of you've been married to multiple people, how will that shake out in the spiritual world? Because he talks pretty benignly about that after death, people who had, married somebody and then later in life that person had died, or I guess they got divorced or something, then they marry somebody else. He talks about how those people who had been coupled will meet in the afterlife and see if they're actually compatible, and that this will happen with the different people that you've been with. And if one of them was really your soulmate, then you'll stay with them. But if not, you part ways, and I think amiably or amicably, and then you go find your soulmate. So I don't think that it's about avoiding conflict. I bet that where Jesus is he's talking about the marriage of goodness and truth, and why he says they're neither marry nor are given in marriage in heaven is that there's a part of the fundamental choice that we make about are you going to love what's good and true or what's evil and false on earth. That's why we're here, is to build that foundation. Hello, peace from Liverpool, England. Hello, Robert Martin from Clearwater. Juan says, Swedenborg had interactions with the spirits of biblical characters. Does he ever mention Apostle Paul at all? He does. Did Paul show up in our show about celebrities in the afterlife? Let me look that up. Yeah, we did a show about celebrities in the afterlife. Come on, give me a second to type here. Yeah. Come on, where's this little thing? What's going on here? Who's talking about this? What are we doing? Whose idea was this? Okay, let's see. What do we got here? Who's that? All right, so we did a show called What Happens to Celebrities in the Afterlife, because Swedenborg had these interesting tidbits about these different people that he met. Okay, what's this? Let me just see if there's... Yes, we did it. Oh. No, we didn't. We did Aristotle, Martin Luther, and then who is this guy? Isaac Newton. Paul is in there, and I don't think it's that favorable. I think there was some friction. I don't want to speak too much about it. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to look that up more. But just because somebody's biblical in the Bible doesn't give you a window into whether or not they, as an individual person, loved what's good or what's true or not. You can write amazing things, you can do very good things, but you can be doing that from a love of your own grandeur, or there can be a million reasons. So people can create things that are very good, that are very good even if they were not good. Swedenborg actually says that all the stuff in the Bible, like in the Old Testament, where there's all this story of armies and killings, and that the people who were doing that were cruel. It was not how human beings should behave, but good was brought out of those actions in that they were recorded and could represent things that were good, regardless of what's going on in the heart. Rita, hi from Yorkshire. Elise said the angels intimidate me a little. I bet. And I had a vision last night and Jesus was in it. What's Jesus like? What was Jesus like in that vision? Anthony says, are you familiar with Joseph? Oh, wait a second. I missed one here. Oh man, I missed so many. Let's go back then. Let's go way back. A question from a friend. A pastor told her that a person cannot go to heaven unless they've been baptized and saved. What do you think Swedenborg would say to this? So heaven is a spiritual thing. Heaven is a spiritual thing. As I said before, heaven is the love of the Lord, which is the same thing as the love of doing what is good, because God is love, and love wants to do what is good. So that state inside of you is a conscious state, which means it's spiritual. The conscious part of you is your spirit and operates in the spiritual world. So that is spiritual. And spiritual things are not dictated by physical things. So the ritual of baptism, where you get water put on you and a couple other things happen, it's just a physical ritual. It is meant to signify something spiritual. It's meant to, and it's done on you as a baby. There's no free will when you're a baby. You're not making choices about what you love and what you enjoy. But it's done to signify that it's the intent of your parents, whoever's caregiving for you, that you, when you can, go through the process of repentance and regeneration, which is what that washing with water symbolizes. So if the baptism ceremony lines up with the inner spiritual work that we do later in life of repentance, then it can be a part of going to heaven. Being saved from what? I think there's this Christian definition of that word, which just means being saved just means some kind of verbal acknowledgement of Jesus or a ritual acknowledgement that Jesus Christ exists. But to be saved is being saved from hell, which is the hell that's inside of us. So to be saved from hell is to be saved from basing our life on the enjoyment of things that are harmful and opposed to the mutual love that makes heaven. So only Jesus, only God in the human form that we can understand, and that is what Jesus is, can save you. But the saving process is this transformation of your spirit, where you go from, and this is actually mapped out in the days of creation, you go from being formless and void to having living things inside you. This is a big, complex process. Saving is not just, okay, you're saved because of you're in a certain building and somebody that's ordained puts water on you. That is, saving has 100% to do with your life and how you live. There can be people who have never heard of baptism or Christianity, but yet live the life that Jesus embodies and commands. They have no problem at all getting into heaven. This is something Swedenborg saw hundreds of times. He says that it is absolutely and positively easy for anyone who lives by their religion and follows their conception of God to get into heaven. So the baptism, salvation, these are things that have deeper meanings and have to be followed in that way. But it's not something that any one organization holds the reins or the keys to. Elise Mason, what does Swedenborg say about communicating with angels and other spirits? It's okay to communicate with them. He doesn't say it's bad in principle. He does give some warnings. He says the spiritual world in his day, which was mid 1700s to late 1700s, was a pretty negative place. There was a lot of mean people coming from the world who now live in the spiritual world, and they carry with them all the kinds of malice and selfishness that they had treasured in their hearts in the world. And so it was dangerous to be out and about talking to spirits in the spiritual world. It was okay for Swedenborg. He had a faith that protected him, or he knew enough stuff that he was protected. But he talks many times about people interacting with spirits and angels and says it's not dangerous. We did a show that I mentioned here before called Is It Safe to Talk to Spirits? Is it safe to talk to spirits? So you can search that if you're watching in post, and otherwise I will put this thing in the chat. That can give you more details around it. Okay. Steven Squarepeg says, hell is also other people, though, I think. Harder to choose that one. It can be thrust upon you. In physical world, it sure can. Like you who you're living around has nothing to do with who you are. Spiritual world, who you are dictates where you live. So you're only around hellish people if you love hellishness yourself. Peace asks, did Swedenborg promote meditation? yes. I don't know if he ever describes meditation like we now use the word commonly, which when you say that, I take to mean you closing your eyes and you're trying to empty your mind. And I know there's all kinds of like walking meditations and stuff, but he will use, well, there's translations where that word is used, and often he will be meditating on particular concepts. So he'll say, I was meditating on the nature of marriage love, and then I came into my spirit. So he talks some about breathing and controlling breathing and how that's important. He certainly had like a lot of like a prayer life and rituals and things. So he does talk about when our physical senses are quieted, that kind of could open up the spiritual ones. So yeah, a bit. Paul Stavro Beauchamp says, we talk about high vibration attitudes and feelings, what is true and good. What about high vibration diet? Did Swedenborg talk about being vegetarian ever, or the negative effects of some foods/diets? Swedenborg, he mentions diet only a couple of times. He says that the very earliest people who he speaks favorably of, he says that they were, he talks about them being pescatarian, that they would eat fish, but they wouldn't raise land animals and kill them. He does say that they ate cheese and dairy stuff. He says that in one place, he says, eating meat is, it's translated like relatively profane. But because it's the way everyone's done it for so long, nobody gets in trouble for it. But on its own, it's like not the ideal state that we would be in. He, I think, as far as I understand the state that he got to when he was in his revelatory phase, he was eating pretty simply. He was eating milk and bread and a ton of coffee. He was kind of on a sort of a sparse diet. I do believe there's differing accounts. There's, I think, one account that somebody who knew him saying he didn't eat meat, but another one says that he did eat pigeon pie and eel. I think that when he was offered meat at other people's houses, he would eat them. So it's not totally conclusive, but I think it seems to indicate that, like, ideally we wouldn't have to do that. And it's tough because, like, I do think that people have been eating meat for so long. It seems like difficult to not for some people. Like some people's genetics, it's tough for them not to have that protein. Like people who have been in cultures who have survived on meat and dairy for millennia. But I like the idea of, yeah, it'd be great to not have to kill animals. So there's some musing about that. Barbara says, any Easter info since we are so close, if you run out of things. Gosh, we did a show on the meaning of Easter. Have you seen that one? I think it's just called The Meaning of Easter. Kind of blanking now on what... Oh, yeah, right, Swedenborg. I was kind of blanking on what we said about it. I'll put it in the chat. Without the time code. Because there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. Let's see, what... well, I mean, the resurrection after 3 days, everything Jesus did was laying out the path for us. So the resurrection after 3 days is like the rebirth that I was talking about before. That happened. That happens after the complete regeneration, which is symbolized by those 3 days. I'll give that for now and see if I run out of stuff later. Jonathan Franco says, what happens to people who commit suicide? Sorry for the heavy question. No problem. This is one we actually get. We did release a little short video about it long ago. The answer is it's different for every single person. there are some Christian traditions I know that say that suicide makes you go to hell, but there's no single act that makes you go to hell or heaven, because the act of taking your own life, who knows what state that person is in, whether, how rational are they, what is their intent, what are their beliefs, and what's their overall spirit like. So Swedenborg mentions it very sparsely. I think he does talk about somebody in the Journal of Spiritual Experiences who had killed themselves with a knife and then couldn't get the knife out of their hand in the spiritual world. I'm sure that's not a permanent condition. So, I mean, he doesn't seem to say, that it's unforgivable. I know he stresses the importance of the life that we're living here, as I was saying before, that this is our chance to join goodness and truth. So I'm sure he would be adamant that you shouldn't do it. But I think if somebody already did do it, I don't think, if you know somebody who did, I don't think there's any evidence that, they're in hell from that. That's not what hell is. It's tragic. Suicide is absolutely devastating. I've had friends I had a good friend who committed suicide, and I just think they must not realize how much damage it's going to cause when they do it. So it's not good to do, but nobody knows exactly what anyone's state is, and the state of mind and heart and what you love is what really matters. Elise says, my birth mom had schizophrenia. She died 2 years ago. Will she still have this disability in heaven? I miss her so much. I don't think so. I don't know what schizophrenia is. It would sort of seem like it's some kind of breach in the normal barriers that keep the physical and spiritual world separate. Seems like a lot of what schizophrenics talk about. It's like there's these other personalities coming through, these other spirits, voices and things coming through that would seem like, based on Swedenborg's description of the spiritual world and its proximity to us, would be that. But I don't know the actual mechanism for what we know. I think schizophrenia wasn't there was no term like that in Swedenborg's day, so he doesn't give us a direct thing. But I would think anything that, if it's any kind of brain issue or a barrier between the physical and spiritual world issue, that would be gone in the spiritual world, particularly in heaven, because the systems that had broken down that led to that would be renewed, or those systems wouldn't even be necessary anymore. So I would think there's freedom there. I mean, heaven is freedom from everything negative. So yeah, I would, just like people with all kinds of challenges in this life, I think that they're getting this new, fully rejuvenated life, and probably having some wisdom from what they went through that the rest of us can learn from. Gaston says, is there an empirical way to know if I'm in a heavenly way? Sometimes Swedenborg says, see what your thoughts are like when you're by yourself. Like, what do you, when there's no social consequences, and like, what do you dwell on? I don't know, man, because sometimes when I'm by myself, just the stupidest stuff will be running through my mind, and I'm just like getting lazy. I'm like, okay, I'll think about that for a while. I don't think that really means who I am. The heaven is about what you enjoy. So whenever you're enjoying doing something that's useful or helpful to someone, that's heavenly. So you could look for what do you enjoy, and it's really about your ruling love. So just look at, what's my purpose in life? Like when I get into a situation, what am I really doing all this for? Like, for example, with me doing Wednesday here, this is an easy example. Am I doing Wednesday for myself? Meaning, am I saying, oh, I want people to say, wow, look at Curtis, he's so great. He's so smart. I know there's not any danger of that in the real world, but am I trying to gather fans? And that would be doing Wednesday. Like, is that the point? Do I not? That's doing Wednesday for myself. That would be for a hellish reason. Am I doing Wednesday because I'm trying to help people? Is that what I care about? That would be doing it for a heavenly. Where am I in the middle of that? That's how you check. What's the thing toward which everything else in your life supports? And if it's your own self-image and you see yourself as greater than other people, And that's what we gotta try to turn around. Mazda Burrito says, what about brutal murderers? How are they finding redemption in hell? The world is messed up, and I'd hope they never have a chance to be redeemed. If you're talking about like people who are murderers, like they killed other people, you can't know what anyone's state is from a single act, but I mean, murder is one of the 10 commandments, and that's because it's one of these things that is like really bad and is just the kind of thing that's difficult to have that live in you and not invite hell in, especially if you're committing it. Within murder, the things that make murder are hatred and cruelty and despising others in comparison with yourself. So it's different. You can't know for sure though, because people, even here, we charge people for like the difference between premeditated murder and incidental manslaughter, and somebody who's young and impulsive and something goes wrong, and there's a difference. So I think probably some murderers are murdering because they love hell and they're committing themselves further to hell by doing that. But you can't know for sure. Attached asks, why do I like these chat sessions so much? It's the great mystery. Why are we having fun? Mary Wolf says, hope you're well. I can't locate any information. Let me fix my tabs. I can't locate any information on Off the Left Eye regarding the lost books from the Bible. Is there mention of such books from Emanuel Swedenborg? Thanks again. The books that Swedenborg talks about being lost are what he says there's something called the Ancient Word, which was like a Bible before the current Bible. And I think he says that the first 5 books of Moses come from that ancient word. I know for sure that there are books that are referenced in the Bible. I think Jasher is one of them. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? There's a couple of times when authors in the Bible will reference books that are no longer in the Bible and no longer extant. And Swedenborg says those were part of the ancient word, which filled the function that the Bible currently fills for the human race before there was the Bible. He talks about it he says it's still out there somewhere, actually. He says that the ancient word still exists in what he calls Greater Tartary. And that was the name for a big swath of, I think, what is now some China and maybe some of Russia. I don't know. But people have gone and tried to look for it, but no one ever found it. Jet, question, does Swedenborg say something about his relationship with Jesus, or that he talked with Jesus instead of spirits and angels? Yes, he recounts a really important experience to him at the beginning of his spiritual awakening where he talked to Jesus, and Jesus, I believe, commissioned him with going and writing these books. Swedenborg asserts that all the ideas and doctrines that he lays out, he says, I didn't learn these from spirits and angels. I learned these from the Lord, who the Lord is the name that that Swedenborg gives to Jesus. And he says, I learned these from the Lord through the Word. So he was saying that Jesus, through the mechanism of the Bible and Swedenborg, the understanding that he gave Swedenborg of it, taught him all these things, that these only come from the Lord. So I think he would say that, the relationship with Jesus was the primary one that he had. Spirits and angels were kind of like supporting and some educating. I mean, obviously some of the stuff that he reports comes out of the mouth of angels and spirits. But I think the theology that he had and what symbolizes what, he says it comes through the word from the Lord. Stephen Square Peg says, I've had experiences with ghosts. How does this fit in with Swedenborg's views? Believe me, it was real. So the spiritual world is all around us. We can at times have interaction with it. And Swedenborg does describe some pretty supernatural sounding interactions between the spiritual and physical world. We actually did a show called Are Ghosts Real? I'm going to post in the chat because you're going to like it, because it gets deeply into all that sort of stuff. Hey, what the... I went to the wrong article. Yeah, oh, do ghosts exist? That's what we called it. We're so sneaky. Okay. So, let me get this. Here's posting in the chat. See if you see anything there that resonates with your experience. Oh, yeah. Juan said the book, The Wars of the Lord, or The Wars of Jehovah. That's in the ancient word. Sure is. Okay. Where did I go? I lost my place. Oh, yeah. Said, how can I read Swedenborg's books? I can't afford to pay money, but I really want to read them. And somebody said, oh yeah, Richard Stevens says, you can download Swedenborg for free as a PDF from Off the Left Eye channel on YouTube. And if you want it even easier than that, just go to Swedenborg.com. On Swedenborg.com, there's like a bookstore, and you can search for Swedenborg's books. And all of the, I'll put the link in the chat, all of the books that the Swedenborg Foundation has as PDF files, which is all the ones that we've translated in our New Century Edition efforts. Those are all available as a free download PDF and a free, one of the ebook formats is free. The other one, I think it's EPUB, is $1 because you have to have it cost money or it won't get hosted on site. Like you have to have it. That's just a part of the requirement of it. So we want it all, that's all freely accessible. The books cost money because we can't afford to print the books, which costs us money, and then give them out. But Swedenborg's message itself is there for free. Okay, cool. All right, I skipped around here a little bit. Hopefully I'm not missing your questions. If I did, I'm sorry. Leave them in the comments afterwards. Deborah Miller says, I've been taught that the Mormon church believes they are the only true church on earth. Does Swedenborg address that at all? He doesn't address the Mormon church because the Mormon church came after Swedenborg. But okay, well, it's a little bit complicated about true churches because Swedenborg does say that there are certain churches that have a more accurate picture of reality, so have more of the truth in them, and especially the ones like the Judaism and Christianity that have the biblical text, the Torah in Judaism and the New Testament in Christianity. He says that that's performs a specific function because the Bible is this centrally important revelatory mechanism. So in that way, there's there's true churches and churches that have maybe more total truth. But as far as like which one is God's church, like which one works the best to get you into heaven, Swedenborg talks about Christianity actually often hindering people getting into heaven because there were so many false ideas had gotten in there, and there were so many people who are living evil lives under the Christian umbrella. So there's not a true church like there's only one church that goes to heaven. I think there are truths, and different churches have them in different abundance. Different religions have them in different abundance. So that's what I want to say about that. We're just about done here, but I'm going to see if I can get another question or two here. Okay. Thanks for the Easter wishes. Christopher or Teal. We'll end with 2 from Christopher, which says, what happens after my physical death to my consciousness? And then says, will I come back as, but then it got cut off. So, because character limit. So your consciousness will continue to exist, and your consciousness is actually your spirit. Your spirit is consciousness, and your spirit has a form just like your body has a form. So your spirit has hands and a head and everything like that. So when your body dies, you will be in your spiritual body, and you'll be fully conscious there, and it'll be you, and you'll have your same mind and same memories and same personality. But there you'll begin this journey of shedding or the earthly elements of consciousness and moving more into the deeper things that make you who you are. And from there you will find the community that accords with your deepest love, and you will continue to grow in love and wisdom forever. And that relates to your second question, which is, did God create me for a reason? Yes, everybody, the particular goal of divine providence with everyone is to get them into some particular place in heaven, because all of us have our own love and wisdom, so our own way, our own goals and motivations, and our own way of understanding life that nobody else can ever have to eternity. So there is, because of those things, there's some useful service, something we can do for the human race that nobody else can do. And so the core effort of divine providence is to get you to become the angel that you're meant to be. So become this person who has this love and wisdom and this mind and heart that's yours, and then in heaven work to do good for the greater human race in community with people who are like you. That's the reason for everyone. There's like subsidiary reasons. There's things that we do while we're in the world that have consequences, but all of it is getting towards that, the fundamental reason, which is the purpose of existence is a heaven from the human race, where everybody is who they are, who God wants them to be, or their destiny is to be, working together to make life better for everyone. That's not so bad, is it? Thanks, everybody. If I missed you, put your comments in the comment section, or if you're watching this afterwards, put them in there. We'll take a look at them, and we will do our best to answer and chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for stopping by and thinking through this fun stuff. See you later.